right, welcome back to the TopLeft podcast. Today's episode is going to be tips for MSPs on how to finish tickets faster. So I'm your host, Wim Kerkhoff. I'm the founder of TopLeft and also founder and owner of two MSPs that I started over the last almost 20 years. And with me is president of one of my MSPs, Kerkhoff Technologies, Joshua Smith. Welcome, Joshua.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, we've prepared some good stuff for today, and the promise is to be able to finish all your tickets in like half the time, meet a lot more of your SLAs. Again, it saves time, money, avoid losing clients, and getting bad reviews. A lot of these things we've done because over the years we made mistakes. We were losing clients, we're overloaded too many tickets. So we'll get into more of that later. And Joshua was along with me for that whole journey, so we'll unpack some of those. And our clients at TopLeft get these results too. Like we have the story from Chase where he improved his SLA from 60% to over 90%, getting his tickets done quicker. And that's hitting it from a lot of sides and with tips like this. Before we begin into some of these tips, Joshua, maybe just what are challenges you've seen in the team with this people working remotely and hybrid, and how to avoid tickets getting stuck and stale and such. What have you seen happens by default if you're not intentional with flow?
Yeah, absolutely. So we, after COVID, went to a hybrid team. We have some in office, we have some hybrid, and we have some like myself who are completely remote. In fact, both myself and the two managers in the company are remote almost all of the time. So that just made it really important that we kept that communication flowing and detected those stuck tickets. So luckily for us, we were already using TopLeft and had been for some time. Obviously, it was developed as part of this group of companies. So we had a bit of a leg up on that. And we really utilized that through the huddle system. So every day we are having service huddles. 3 times a week we have project huddles where we bring up TopLeft, we go through the tickets, the projects, and really identify stuff that's stuck. And by doing that, it really helps us build that culture in the team of not cherry picking and not putting something away because it's too hard and grabbing the next thing. Share it with the team, post in a communication tool, bring it up in a huddle. And we've seen that's really effective. Our waiting tickets has dropped dramatically. And neglected tickets, which is what we call tickets that have been sitting in waiting statuses for more than 3 or 5 days, those have gone well down as well. And it's easy for our service manager to identify those. Yeah. So that's been a key advantage for us.
Because what do you lose being remote versus in person? Like, you can't just see what people are doing, right?
You definitely lose something. As a technician, when I started as a technician, we were all in office. And, as a junior, someone who was learning, being able to spin my chair around and talk to the person behind me is definitely a big advantage. And as a manager, you can overhear conversations and intercede and maybe catch things. So you definitely do need to be more intentional about building these communication channels, asking questions and bringing things up that might just happen organically if you're all in the office.
So our first tip was just better real-time communication. Going back and forth on tickets can work, or by email, but there's better ways. So what have you seen is working well to keep those tickets going?
Yeah. Again, this is something we've been really intentional about. We try and minimize direct messages. That's one thing that we identified fairly early into hybrid remote work, was that technicians had a tendency to say, I'll just ask another technician. And that technician might not know, they'd ask someone else. So really encouraging, just even if it's a question you think only one person can answer, we use Teams, post in that technician's channel in Teams, because it allows everybody to weigh in and has definitely helped us get responses, get solutions to clients quicker by having someone who, the technician might not have even thought of asking myself or anything like that, but it's really easy for someone to see it and go, I actually remember this, or there's an SOP here that will really help you with this, or prompting those conversations has been a big advantage. And beyond that as well, getting people to be comfortable with just jump into an ad hoc call. If you're stuck on something, there's someone else, just 5-minute call in Teams. Often we find that gets things solved very quickly.
over the last, even just the last few years, it seems like maybe 5 years, a lot of tools integrating, let's say, Teams with ConnectWise, Autotask, for like time entries, notes. Because that can be the danger of using Teams is now your conversations are there, but client can't see it, managers can't see it, it's not on the ticket.
Yeah, again, definitely something that we train and work with our teams on. They do their time entries, their notes, and everything through TopLeft. So we do want to make sure, even if there is a conversation, we get them to copy that into the ticket in the internal notes using TopLeft, and making sure that information is recorded. And again, by having those discussions in public channels, it also helps cut down on that as well. With integrations, we definitely use tools. We have an automation setup that allows us to quickly create or reference tickets in Teams, but then open it and do the work in TopLeft. Making sure the team is always directed to the right tool is key.
And so you mentioned Izzy was working on some automation with, was it Power Automate or something, to create tickets from Teams?
Yeah, it was just basically a no-code automation from Teams, just to allow us to create tickets and reference tickets as well. So you put in T# ticket number and it brings up a link and the heading of the ticket. We had the same thing before when we were in Slack before we moved across. Yeah. And again, it just helps get that information quicker, saves that time of someone searching for a ticket that they think is called workstation replacement when it's actually called upgrade project, for example. Those sort of things that are really easy to happen as you work large quantities of tickets. Yeah. Building that clarity.
And certainly, putting links to tickets into a chat conversation helps too, to make it easier for everyone to click the link and get to the right ticket, not searching. Yeah. And then, how are you tracking who's doing what in a, let's say, daily huddle? How do you go through and see who's got what tickets?
So we use the swim lane view for that. We have a huddle board in TopLeft that allows us to see that. And on an hour-to-hour basis, we have a great service coordinator in our team, and she's able to, with a combination of TopLeft and keeping an eye on the conversations, we post when we're going to lunch, when we're going on site, just so she's always got that insight into where people are. And for me, from that leadership point of view, it's great because I just go to the management channel and say, hey, I need someone this afternoon. And okay, this person can help. Yeah. Really speeds that up, particularly where we get emergency calls or anything like that. Visibility is important.
Yeah, and kind of related to that is just managing out projects and capacity. So I know, like the Crafty Penguins team, which is our other MSP, they build out this Excel model for planning out capacity. So if you check the show notes from this podcast episode, we have a link to, you can download our Excel template for capacity planning. So definitely check that out. There's a lot of automation that can be done in the PSA. So that's just exploring the workflow automation there. And we've been using ConnectWise for 14, I think, going on 15 years to build out things there. What are some of the things we're still using today for just automating tickets and configurations and stuff?
So with TopLeft, the whole Agile model that we use for running our tickets, running our business, we really utilize automations to get information more quickly. What we found is that the solution to the ticket is often not the bit that takes the time. It's either the communication or the research. And so we have a lot of recurring tickets. We do proactive agreements where we test backups, we review security status, review firewall rules, lots and lots of things we do to make sure our clients' networks are always running at best practice. And so with those tickets, we have automated templates set up. Basically, you can go in, you can say, this is an office ticket, it's a workstation ticket, and it will actually add a link directly to the SOP into the tool, into the ticket rather. Yep. So, we use Confluence, Atlassian Confluence for our SOPs and our processes. So it's not a direct integration to ConnectWise, but we're able to use workflows to make that work for us.
Yeah, that's huge for standardization and make it easier to find and not following an old version of it or
Exactly. Doing it from memory, which is something we sometimes find we have to train people out of. They read the SOP once and they do it from memory, but we always want to have that SOP up no matter how many times you've done it, because tools change, products change, systems change.
Yeah. So again, there's a lot of these engines and things like platforms like Halo have even more workflow automation in the PSA. That's what the A stands for, is automation, professional services automation. Looking at, there's so much, it's a whole database. There's tons of fields to look at, and based on that, changing statuses, budgets, all kinds of things. Number 3 is moving on to RMMs. Lots of automation that can be done there. It's remote monitoring and management, but really it's probably more automation than management is kind of what I always say. And so we use ConnectWise Automate, and I guess what are some of the big things we do there with automation?
The key automation that's really saved us probably the most time, to pick one, would be our onboarding. You get a new client, they've got 50 workstations. Back 10 years ago, you would take your USB key, you'd go on site, plug it into each machine, have the person log you in. We don't have to do any of that anymore. Whether it's an Active Directory or an Azure Active Directory network, we can use automated deployment scripts to push out not just the management tool, Automate, or Intune in some environments, which we use through Microsoft, but it also puts on the antivirus. It deploys best practices, reports back on health. So it allows us to get that transition week done quickly, and that's often the most difficult week for an MSP and for the client. How fast you can get in and support them is key. And we know from experience that if something goes wrong at that phase, it can really damage the relationship and take a lot of work to get back. So nailing onboarding is something where automation has really helped us in a big way.
Because we've just been using these things for so long that it's like second nature. But if you're not using any automation like that, or maybe you have monitoring, but not the automation, like it's got to explore that. Just, you can't be doing any repetitive, tedious stuff. Like it's such a waste of time.
Absolutely. And some things you simply couldn't do without automation. So I can give another quick example. So on local admin on our clients' machines is a password that cycles every 12 hours. Now you can imagine the labor overhead to have people cycle 1,000 passwords every 12 hours. It's simply not practical.
No.
But by using automation, we are able to do that, improve the client security, and it doesn't take any more of our time.
I remember working at an MSP, and they had the same admin password across basically all their clients, just all their systems, just brutal on the servers and switches and everything. One password to get into the entire network, anything, anywhere. Crazy. I don't know if you're still involved with that, but the alerts that come in and dealing with those, because there can be a lot of noise generated, a lot of alerts with servers and disk space and patches and CPU. Like how much automation is happening there now?
There's a fair bit. As you said, I'm not involved in it the way I once was, but we definitely do NOC reviews. We look for patterns, and I think that's the thing that we've really found with NOC is one alert might not be an issue unless it's hard drive is full, but a pattern of alerts, even if the tickets are auto closing, is important to see. And so, not so much automation directly in the tool, but in our reporting, we have a look and say, hey, how many tickets do these clients have? If something starts flapping, the ticket number goes up. And that's a big red flag that there's something to dig into.
Okay, and tip number 4 is got to do patch management. Just doing patches manually on Windows, on Mac, it's because we used to do that years ago. I remember going through all my machines and working with some early clients and doing it manually, but it's just too much and it's changing all the time and too risky. So what are some of the challenges what are the other challenges have you seen with patch management?
So using Automate, using any other tool, we have used other RMMs over my time here. The big shift was when we really those tools really went to working with Microsoft instead of against them. That's been a huge shift. Microsoft has allowed the tools now to kind of guide, but not necessarily overrule the patching. And that solved a lot of the problems we used to have where patches would fail to install or they would be forced. The other big advance we've made that the tooling has made is the ability to do it in a staged fashion. So that's a key thing for us. So, we don't patch day one, but we're also not waiting a month or 2 months. That used to be standard practice, and you'll still have people in the industry say, "Oh, I don't patch for 3 months because it might break something." Well, unfortunately, getting cryptoed will break a lot more things. So we really do recommend patch as quickly as you can. However, you don't want to take out 500 machines, 1,000 machines with a bad patch. Yep. So what we do is we basically deploy it on a limited basis. We use our own internal computers as guinea pigs. We load it out to them. We run it out to a select group of machines, and then we do the full rollout. And so far, that's allowed us to avoid any major issues with patches causing problems.
Yep. Yeah, there's so much policy in there on what time of day it happens, time of week, and avoid annoying Absolutely. Users.
Yeah.
Can't reboot
and I think
during the day. Yeah.
Yeah, the other big change, I think, is that you can reboot a machine now and it'll come back with everything pretty much where it was. That was the other big sticking point, is people would leave tabs open all over their computer and want them there the next day. Well, if you're patching, you've got to reboot the machine. But now, most cases, things will come back. So that's less than that pain point for the end user.
Yeah, even Notepad under Windows, it's got state management now. I think the only thing I lose is like 2FA kind of stuff. You got to re-authenticate a bunch of things.
Exactly.
Yeah. Some of that even will persist as well. So yeah, with today's tools and the right configuration, patches should not take that much time for an MSP to manage, and it scales very well.
Overhead is way down on what it was five years ago even.
Yeah. Okay. So our final tip 5: implementing Agile methodology. That's obviously, So Agile, I'm a big fan of that. I got into that first like 25 years ago. About 25 years ago, my first job doing software development is because we had no process. It was really kind of a gun show. Just no mentorship, nothing, no automated testing, no anything. Just work on stuff all day, all week long. So I remember looking into that with colleagues and just getting the basics of this. I don't think it was really called Agile yet, but that's what it was. And saw bits of that as I was doing some jobs in manufacturing with Lean, because that's Agile is based in Lean, so saw that there. And then coming back into the software development world, with my own business 10, 15 years ago, we were doing Scrum. And actually we weren't doing it in Scrum, and I saw it was kind of chaos with how we're developing, and then implemented Scrum was working well, and saw it was going to be beneficial in the MSP as well, because we're lots of open tickets, stuff falling between the cracks, and like, hey, how can we learn from the software dev world and get that same flow and just peace and calmness and prioritize and doing the right things. So that's how we got into Agile. And it's a focus of visualizing your work, minimizing how many things you're doing, avoid multitasking, that just do one thing and move on. So that's a concept, and getting people working together to get the work done together, collaborating. We're not all doing our own things, our own tickets, but work together to get the work done. So there's a lot in there that we can't summarize all of Agile in like 5 minutes here, but it's definitely worth looking at, just the basics. And the Kanban is sort of the simplest version of that, of visualize your work. Don't change anything in what you're doing, just visualize it, and then start to make improvements. And has a huge impact. We've seen that in our MSP. We're still living that today, and seen that with the clients we support. Hundreds of MSPs around the world. Joshua, from your perspective, as going through this journey, going from like a junior technician to the company now president, how have you seen this helped, and how do you characterize it compared to other approaches, what you hear in the industry?
Yeah, it's been a real process. I'm sure there are people watching this podcast right now who are saying, "Oh, it'll work in manufacturing, or it works in software dev, but it won't work in service." I've been there myself. And I've just seen how you can implement it and make it work in this industry, and how powerful it is. Moving projects ahead, moving service tickets ahead, building collaboration, And just thinking of everything in that way, you mentioned earlier, we've been doing this for so long. It's hard for me to kind of think sometimes of how we used to do things because we've been doing this for a long time. But I take that approach into everything I do. You know, I don't work tickets anymore. I don't really work projects anymore unless they're business projects but that's still the approach I take. You know, we're doing compliance right now. So we break the compliance process down into weekly sprints because it makes it more digestible, easier to track. Everyone knows where they are. And it really helps the team as well. You know, compliance is, I think, a great example where you start with 180 questions. And if you try and get all of that in your head in one go, then it's going to become daunting, and then it becomes so easy to put it off for next week and not to move it ahead. You know, breaking it down into weekly sprints, you're going to deal with 10 questions. Well, 10 questions isn't too bad. And then you start looking and you realize, well, 4 of those questions we've already answered, and 4 we can answer pretty quickly. So that only leaves 2 I actually need to do too much like new work on. And suddenly it just becomes so much easier to move that ahead, you know, and mindset matters. You know, people going home from work having achieved something makes it so much easier to come in the next day and do it again. And having sustainable, meetable targets is key. And I think that's part of Agile that can apply everywhere.
I think it's the way to build teams that are set up to win. And it's the book I'm reading right now called Wiring the Winning Organization by one of the leaders with Agile and DevOps and these methodologies. How do we set the teams up to win and get stuff done and take care of the client and keep reducing our costs and doing things quicker and quicker over time? Again, so yeah, I've checked our other podcast episodes. This is something we cover all the time, Agile, and as well on our YouTube channel, lots of other content there as well, around Agile, Kanban. Our clients are presenting, our partners are presenting there. So check that out. There's tons of books. This is a huge area where just this tip here is just explore it and start to learn it if you haven't ever dipped your toe into it. Okay, so we've covered 5 different things here, just recapping, just different ways to improve ticket flow. Again, there's a lot more that we could cover, but wanted to just give 5 on this. And so we had, real-time communication, whether it's Slack or Teams. And okay, you got to balance that without not interrupting each other, but doing it in a way to make sure they can help get their work moving. And sometimes that requires getting some help. The workflow automation in your PSA, like ConnectWise, in your RMM, like ConnectWise Automate, patch management, you got to dial that in and get it working, and Agile. And so hope that was useful. We have a giveaway as well, as I mentioned, the capacity planner. So hit the link and we'll give you a copy of our Excel planning tool with the explainer video on how to use it. Again, we use that in about a half an hour a week to really predict when we can onboard the next client with confidence and know who's going to be doing it and when could we finish it without having to work overtime and stress people out. So check that out. Any other closing thoughts around improving ticket flow, Joshua?
I was just going to say, if you're watching this video and you've got questions about how to make Agile work, you know, from someone who's on that server side and has done the technical, we can share my LinkedIn. I'm always happy to have a conversation and talk to people about how we made it, how, you know, with Wim's leadership and the tools that he's built, we made this work in our business, and it's been a huge advantage and a huge step forward for us. Yep.
Okay. All right. Thanks for coming on here. It's been fun to look back some of the memory lane and different things. So
absolutely. It's over a decade.
Yep. All right.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.